Hey there! I had to add this before the video starts because I made a mistake and I wanted to correct it before you heard the story. In my video, I recorded that this happened in 2021, but it actually happened on May 21st, 2013, or maybe even late night of May 20th, 2013, somewhere around there. But just to give you the background, this says a lifeboat and helicopter were sent to the scene after Dover Coast Guard received an alert that a man had gone overboard on a ferry traveling from Calais to Dover just after 1 BST. They were helped by a Royal Navy warship that was in the area at the time, a Coast Guard spokesman said. The search was called off just before 6 BST, he added. He said that the passenger was last seen mid-channel. Kent police have been informed. So I found this as a link underneath the article, and I just wanted to take this time to correct that this event did not happen in 2021. It actually happened in 2013. I look forward to getting your feedback on this video, and thank you for watching. Hi, curious minds and headline hunters. Welcome to another episode of Talk, Listen, and Discuss, a show where we can talk about current events, trends, and of course, true crime. There has been so much going on about Amy Bradley, and Netflix, the docuseries, is going crazy. It's going bananas. People are just watching and rewatching that docuseries, and I am so happy for the family to be getting that kind of exposure. And it really has been something to see all the discussions going on there, what people think may or may not have happened. And there's a lot of strong emotions about it. Of course, the research that's coming along with the rabbit hose is pretty interesting too. And I wanted to share a site that I found with you called internationalcruisevictims.org. And I was going to present one story from that because this happened on May 18th, or at least it was posted on May 18th, 2021. And I wanted to read that story because it's only 4 years old. And I know there's other stories out there that are recent or around that time, but this one is another one I haven't heard of. And that's the one interesting fact about the Amy Bradley docuseries. It's not only throwing a light on her story, but it's also incidentally throwing lights on other stories. So I want to push this one out there and see what you guys think of it. And this is how it starts. Just about a year ago, on May 21st, in the middle of the night, our son Richard went missing from the P&O ferry Pride of Kent. He had just turned 30, and to celebrate the occasion, he and his fiancée had gone to the continent on holiday. That night, he boarded the ferry in Calais, France, and was headed to Dover, England. His fiancée was the last person to report seeing him. She said he had gone on deck for a cigarette. There's something to be very common with these stories. It's usually they're going out to like the pool or they're out on the patio, they're smoking and drinking, a lot of drinking involved in these types of stories. I also found that not surprising, but fascinating that that was the recurring theme. She said he had gone on deck for a cigarette. When he didn't show up, she went to the car deck. He was not there or anywhere else on board the vessel. Nobody reported seeing or hearing him go overboard, and there were no CCTV cameras on the ship. That's another thing. You would think in 2021 these cruise ships would be littered with cameras. I've been on 3 cruises. I never paid attention to the cameras. I didn't notice a lack of cameras or an excess of cameras or placement of cameras. Now I'm going to be even more cautious on where these cameras are because I want to be near them. I want to make sure I am near them just in case. You just never know. We learned this when we asked to see any recorded footage of the voyage, but the authorities didn't seem too concerned. They assumed that he had jumped voluntarily, and so the case was closed. We later wrote to all the ferry companies that sail between England and France, asking if they had CCTV cameras on deck. Only one company, DFDS Seaways, responded. It said that it had cameras on deck and that the cameras were crucial in yielding information that made a rescue possible. We were told that he had been driving for more than 14 hours the day before boarding the ferry, and he had very little sleep. So he was clearly exhausted, but he could have had an accident and fallen. A deck gate could have been left open, and a number of other explanations are possible. If P&O had had CCTV cameras on the ship, it seems almost certain that we would have had answers to our questions. We wrote to them to complain that there was no evidence of what happened to our son and received the reply that they were equally mystified. We find this response to be outrageous, given that a company that transports someone should be, to the utmost extent possible, responsible for his safety. I 100% agree with that. You would think that there would be more oversight, not just from regulations, but just from the company themselves, just to do that kind of due diligence to make their passengers feel super safe. I hope if anything comes out of this Amy Bradley case is that there's more pressure for the cruise ships to put more cameras on board. I am mortified, guys. We have been on a few cruises, and I remember one of the cruises, the girls felt they were old enough to go walking the cruise ship by themselves, and we let them. That is not going to happen again. They're older now, but still, I don't think that if we take a cruise anytime soon, that is not going to happen again because this is bringing awareness. And one of the things that I really paid attention to is when they were saying that basically a cruise ship is like its own floating city, and that crimes happen in cities, so they're going to happen on cruise ships. That is just crazy to me. Okay, so whatever the extent of P&O's mystification, as far as we know, they never followed up at all. Apparently, their feelings were that it was too bad, but just one of those inconvenient things. 6 months after the tragedy, I found absolutely no mention online of Richard's disappearance. It appears that the ferry companies are more concerned with keeping shipboard disappearances away from the public eye than they are with clearing up cases and making known how often they happen. I had read somewhere that on average 20 people go missing a year from cruise ships, and they believe that that is a severe underreporting. I'm kind of starting to get that impression now. The totally irresponsible indifference that P&O has exhibited with their interest in keeping things quiet, totally eclipsing their desire to avoid more such cases, is what motivated us to bring this to the public eye. 6 months after Richard disappeared, we began a campaign to demand that P&O ferries install CCTV cameras on their passenger decks. The company already has such cameras in their duty-free shops. Apparently, protecting against shoplifters is a greater priority to them than passenger safety. Spot on. That is spot on. That profit motive is always going to drive certain decisions. So it's time for the consumer to start hitting them where it hurts, and that is in their pocket. I would demand better security before we step on board to those ships because that's the only way they're really going to pay attention quickly. It is their responsibility to know what is going on board their own ships, not to throw out the hypothesis that someone probably jumped with absolutely no witnesses or other evidence to support it, and then not take subsequent action is beyond belief. We brought our petition public. In the first week alone, we obtained 80,000 signatures. That is amazing. An incredible figure for a petition of this kind and a show of public support for our position that these cameras belong on deck. Amen. Yes, 100% they do. At this time, we have more than 96,000 signatures. So far, to the best of our knowledge, P&O has not installed one such camera. Shame on them. Shame on them. They should be doing better now that they know better. Later, we received a letter from Helen Diebel, CEO of P&O, saying that this conclusion was based on evidence from the ship's crew and a statement from Richard's fiancée. We wrote back saying that we knew of no evidence and asked the company to share with us what evidence it had, but received no answer. Nor do we know of anything that Richard's fiancée said that would support such an idea. It doesn't sound like they're still in communication with that fiance. You would think that they would know if they were still talking to each other intimately. I mean, this couple was going to get married. That's kind of weird, huh? In August 2013, we had a tree planting ceremony for him at Whitstable Castle. More than 200 people from across the country and overseas showed up, a sign to us of how well thought of he was. He was friendly and always wanted to do good. In May of this year, we had a picnic at Whitstable Castle to observe his 31st birthday. What a young guy. so much life ahead of him still. Many of his friends showed up to join us. Doesn't mention that the ex-fiance did. We will continue to remember Richard and to honor his memory by continuing our campaign that ferry lines put CCTV cameras on deck so others will be spared our suffering. Our member of parliament, Julian Brazier, wrote to the Minister of Transport about Richard's case. The minister replied that each company was responsible for preparing its own risk assessment. When we then wrote to P&O urging them to revise their risk assessment, we received no reply. But their spokesman said that Richard's disappearance was that of only one person and that such events were infrequent. We leave you to imagine how those sentiments made us feel. Yes, how awful that it was just one person. One life can make such a huge difference to many lives in the world. I can't believe that they would even say that. And how do you say that to grieving parents? How do you say that and look at yourself in the mirror? And whatever the cost is, I'm sure the consumer would be happy to pay for if they knew that their money was going to something that would help save people or at least be able to be a part of the criminal justice system. Who wouldn't want something like that? I don't understand why there's not more oversight and enforcement because what I hear or what based on my research and what I'm hearing is that even those sensors that are supposed to help prevent people from going overboard or at least alert the ship to if somebody does go overboard, there's no proof that they're working, as in literally working, like their sensor is on. We have to do better as people looking out for other people, as industries who are providing a service, we have to do better. This is just bizarre how many of these stories are really out there and how little is being done. So I really think it's amazing. Whether Netflix did everything that they could in their power to present that story the best way possible, it did at least do this one thing. It got the conversation started. So thank you for listening to this article. If you want, go visit the internationalcruisevictims.org. There's plenty of other stories on there, and they're really good stories. And the families, I believe, would be so appreciative that somebody is listening to them, reading about their experience, and really engaging and supporting their fight. So take care of yourself, take care of each other, and God bless you. And until next time, bye.